This is a video abstract for a research article I co-authored with Dr. Glenn Leshner. In our online experiment, we found that television news stories are beneficial for immigrants learning about politics. Overall, our results provided experimental support for the results of at least 2 surveys with immigrant respondents. Our study also contributed to clarifying a prediction made by a seminal article over half a century ago. Please continue watching for more details. Half a century ago, the authors of the knowledge gap hypothesis suggested that under certain circumstances, television may narrow the gaps in knowledge. However, a recent meta-analysis showed that television maintains the gaps in knowledge instead of narrowing them. Yet, 2 surveys with immigrant participants showed, when taken together, that television narrowed the knowledge gaps induced by English language skills and education. Language skills and education vary greatly among immigrants living in the United States today. For example, almost half of foreign-born adults speak English less than very well. Also, foreign-born adults are 3 times more likely to have less than a high school degree in comparison to adults born in the United States. Our experiment explored the conditions that facilitate the leveling role of audiovisual news for the foreign-born audience residing in the United States. In total, 137 foreign-born participants took part in the experiment, during which they were exposed to the same 3 local news stories. Among the 3 stories, one story focused on how the city of Muskogee, Oklahoma, regulates panhandling by issuing permits. Another story covered a town hall meeting in Portland, Oregon, where business owners discussed a proposed road repair fee for businesses. The last story covered a day when Wisconsin's Democratic senators left the state to avoid voting on a bill they opposed. So, among the participants of the experiment, roughly 1/3 were randomly assigned to watch the 3 news stories as television news. Another 1/3 of the participants read the transcripts of the same news stories as plain text, as if the stories were printed in an online newspaper. The remaining 1/3 of the participants listened to the soundtracks of the same news stories as if they were a radio broadcast. When it comes to theories about multimedia news, we tend to classify multimedia based on 2 dimensions. One dimension includes the presentation modes used to communicate information. The other dimension includes sensory modes used to perceive information. When it comes to presentation modes, the 2 main ones are words and pictures. Words describe what they name, and pictures depict what they name. To decode the meaning of words, people need to be trained. At the same time, understanding pictures requires simply recognizing what's in the picture. The integrated text and picture comprehension model lists several points on how to use media to benefit learners with poor language skills or insufficient prior knowledge. Some of these points are as follows. First, the message should include both words and pictures so that pictures could aid novice learners. Second, the words should be spoken over the pictures and not written over the pictures as text. This is to make sure that the visual sensory channel is not overloaded with incoming information. Finally, at any given time, the meaning of spoken words should match the meaning of pictures as much as possible to reduce the demands on the information processing system. It should be noted that when we tested participants' recognition memory for facts stated in the 3 news stories, we asked them only about the facts that in the audiovisual condition met the requirements of the integrated text and picture comprehension model.
Ideas were posted on boards in the ballroom, others voiced theirs.
Our results showed that participants with language skills at 1 standard deviation below the mean remembered more from audiovisual news than from text. Likewise, participants with the mean language skills also remembered audiovisual news better than text. It should be noted that the gap in memory scores between those with low and mean language skills was narrower in the audiovisual condition than in the text condition. This means that audiovisual news narrowed down the gap in learning between the relatively high and relatively low language groups by improving the learning for those low on language and by attenuating improvements in learning for those relatively high on language skills. Looking at these results, we can conclude that our study bounds the knowledge gap hypothesis prediction about the leveling role of television to the memory for news in foreign-born audiences who vary in their English language skills. However, it should be noted that there were no moderation effects of language on comprehension of information, that is, on participants' ability to understand information that was not explicitly stated as facts. This likely means that pictures in the audiovisual news aided those with weaker language skills at the early stages of information processing, but the aids of pictures did not carry over into the later stages of information processing. In our experiment, the most profound effects on learning were observed when multimedia news interacted with education. More specifically, the results for recognition memory were as follows. In the text news condition, participants without education in the United States remembered fewer facts than participants with 5 years of education in the United States. However, in the audiovisual condition, participants without education in the United States remembered slightly more than participants with some education in the United States. Here we might be observing the expertise reversal effect. This is when experts on the topic get distracted by educational aids such as pictures and therefore learn less than they would from materials without educational aids. That said, the expertise reversal effect is not supposed to lead to participants with no U.S. education outperforming participants with U.S. education. In other words, these lines should get closer in the audiovisual condition than in the text condition, but they should not overlap. More research is needed to verify this finding. Now, how did multimedia news interact with education in its effects on comprehension? In the text condition, participants with no U.S. education understood less than participants with 15 years of U.S. education. Yet the education-induced gap reduced significantly in the audiovisual condition. This likely means that the meaning of pictures as a presentation mode might have compensated for the possibly weaker schemas for participants without U.S. education. When it comes to participants with 15 years of education, what might have interfered with their learning could be a negative attitude toward audiovisual news. Whether this hypothesis holds should be explored in future studies. Overall, our results suggest that to learn better from news, it is preferable to have a varied media diet even if one has a favorite way of getting news, such as reading a newspaper. Our results also suggest how important it is to support the production of quality audiovisual news. Thank you so much for watching. Please find the link to the article in the description.